Welcome to LangTalent, the podcast by MultiLingual Media exploring the human side of the language industry and the future of work. I'm Eddie Arrieta, CEO at MultiLingual Media. Today, we're talking about what happens when real-world pressures, AI, tighter budgets, and global expansion collide with the work of language professionals and companies around the world. Our guest, Robin Ayoub, has seen that transformation from every angle as an executive in major LSPs and advisor helping companies shape go-to-market strategies for language and AI services, and the host of Localization Fireside Chat, a podcast where he's been chronicling the industry's shift towards smarter, more aligned operations. Robin, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Eddie. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Good to be with you.
It is great. I'm sure our audience is really going to appreciate this conversation. And for me, I've gotten to know you a bit. We share space in different conferences, including the International Translation Forum in Saudi, and also being interviewed by you in your podcast. One of the most insightful conversations I've had, Robin. And I guess from my end, I want to know, right, from the many hats you've worn, executive advisor, podcast host, how would you describe what you do to people?
What I do right now is being a voice for the industry, being a voice for what is happening in the industry, what is changing in the industry. That's number one. And number two, through that, gain the learning, the knowledge of speaking to various executives, various important parties in our industry, and transfer that knowledge and encapsulate it back into an advisory, into an advice, if you will, to other people who needs advice in our industry, who needs to be guided in our industry today more than ever. A lot of people, they think they have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, you've been through this many times, and I've heard this conversation before. We've seen technology, and technology gets in and out, and people stay the same. But this is a disruptive technology that nobody can ignore. And this is where the rubber hit the road. I mean, if you are going to be able to do it on your own, good for you. That means you have the skills and the talents. If you don't, then you need to talk to people who actually been there, done that, and they may have some, different insights than you would have. Because a lot of times what happened within each individual company of the 19,000 companies in our industry, we develop our own ecosystem of conversations internally to each company. And we think, because we're shy by nature as an industry, we think we know what everybody's doing, but they don't. And we assume what the market is, where the market is going, what market competition is doing, we assume where they're heading, but we don't really know for sure. Again, that voice from the outside looking in to some of these conversation, to some of these dialogues that are happening inside of these organizations with people like me. I'm not the only one. There are many people like me out there. It helps guide you to the next level. And so back to your question, how do I describe it? It's a 23 years of knowledge encapsulated into a conversation with somebody. And I've been having those conversations for a few months now after the recent change in my career to help small, medium-sized enterprise. I'm not worried too much about the larger companies. They've got lots of fund to go hire, consultants, hire expertise, etc. But those individuals who can't, there are small to medium-sized companies. Fractional work help. Fractional work where you don't have to pay the full salary of, you mentioned, we were talking just before the podcast started. You don't have to pay a full salary, but you can pay a small amount of money to gain a little bit of a knowledge or a little bit of advantage in the industry. So that's where I am. That's where I am right now. And one more thing, just to add, exactly 6 weeks ago, I started a company called N49 Networks. And for those who don't know what N49 is, the 49 parallel separate Canada from the US. So anything north of the 49 is called Canada. So it's called N49 Networks, and I refer to the N49 as Canada. N49 Network is a wholly owned company under the Americas Sales and Marketing, and Americas Sales and Marketing is a company owned by me as well.
All right. Thank you, Robin, for the update. And of course, when you're talking about the industry and you're saying 23 years, many changes, you've led sales at companies. It's easy to say what you're mentioning. You're saying, "Oh, we've seen these changes, right?" And maybe what that generates in people is this sense of like, I don't have to look into it. Like I didn't look into how to do websites, and look at me, I'm doing fine. But it seems like you're saying it is one of those technologies that if you're not looking at what is happening with it, you might miss not only opportunities, because there are opportunities for everyone everywhere, because of the introduction of artificial intelligence, but also opportunities, but also the changes stemming from you actually like actively putting things together in
That's
your
right.
brain, the way in which you are doing it right now. What have you seen that is changing in that relationship between people and technology?
So there are two, three categories of people that I talk to. People who are not really paying attention to what's going on out there in terms of technology changes. People who are paying attention to it, but they stuck in their journey, they can't move, or if they're moving, they're not moving fast enough to adapt to the new technologies. And the third category is people who are really avant-garde, like they're taking it on, they're developing it, they're re-engineering, restructuring their services from the traditional services to the new services associated with the new technologies. The first category, though, I call it head in the sand. Head in the sand expression, meaning if the storm blows by, everything is okay. I'll take my head out of the sand. This is where people are it's, in fact, it's happening now. They're up for a rude awakening because you may put your head in the sand. You may not pay attention to what's going on around you in terms of technology changes, technological changes. But here's what you're going to be paying attention to. When the work dries up and when the work gets reduced to a point where you start having to fire people. And I know people don't like to speak about that because in our industry, a bit of a taboo to go out in public and say, my company laid off a few people or the other company laid off 1,000 people. And that's happening on a day-to-day basis. It may not hit the press wire, it may not hit the multilingual media magazine, but they are happening on a day-to-day basis. And people don't lay off people because they like to do it, just because they can't afford having them if the work is not there. If the revenue is not there, they just cannot afford having it. Example, for instance, and I use that example in the previous conversations. So take example, for instance, the Translation Bureau of Canada. They outsource close to 350 million words per year in Canada. Now, in the fiscal year 24-25, they outsourced close to 175 million. But meanwhile, they translated 10x of the 350. So how did they translate 10x of the 350? Using technology, using AI or equivalent or other tools that allows them to do a lot more content to be translated for a less dollars, etc. My main concern with our industry, and I've been talking about this for 23 years, innovation generally does not come in from inside the industry. It's forced upon us by outside the industry factors. So meaning that market shifts or technology adoption, etc. I'm always reminded by this famous article I always quoted by, it was put on by, I think it was Slater, Eddie, where this guy, YouTube personality, Mr. Beast, for instance, right? And he wanted to, he got frustrated, doing all the translation, video translation using the localization industry. He got really frustrated. He had three problems: high cost, bottleneck of delivery, delays, and complication in the process. Process too complicated. He went and opened his own AI company to do his own translation. So again, we're not really venturing into saying, what does the market need? The biggest question in the industry is, what does the market need? How can I forecast what the market's going to need in 5 years? I was having a conversation with a gentleman I'm going to do a podcast with in 2-3 weeks from now from Argentina, just this morning. And the question was, we are looking at technology in the lens of where we are right now. I'm 58, and the gentleman I was talking to is in his 70s. So just think about the kids that they're going to school today, and they're still in a young age. How are they going to be seeing this technology in 20 years from now? What is technology going to look like? right? So we are thinking about this in a very short term. Today, we're in the November timeframe, right? Most companies in our industry, guess what they're doing? Working on their budget for 2026. They're setting up the budgets for 2026. And that's all. 2026. I venture to guess maybe there's a small percentage of our industry they're working on a 5-10 year plan, but not everybody. Not everybody's working on a 5-10 year plan. Just get me out of the fiscal year of 2026 and we'll talk about the rest of it down the road. This is short-sighted, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm being hard because I've heard these conversations a million times. This is very short-sighted. We have to plan a runway as to either evolve or devolve within either short-term or long-term.
What happens in that conversation with the talent, right? And in your case, we can see that you are a professional that it's able to understand some of the nuances that the market has, and then adapt to the conversations and use the knowledge that's been acquired, experiences that have been acquired, and the technologies that are appearing to maximize or rather optimize output given whichever period in the world in the life you are at. Because of what you're mentioning, it makes me think of like the people that never even get affected by any of this, right? There are certain places in the world just because of how fast the world moves, like their entire lifetime will not change. And I say this from like a small town in Colombia, right? Like I can
Right.
totally see this tiny village is like, yeah, you will be affected in terms of like having more access. Now internet is like that. Now they have phones. They have internet in these remote places, and they consume internet at these very remote places, and they don't have even a stove that is like decent enough. But there are definitely changes that happen without us having to consider them. What are you seeing in the talent in the industry, in the translators, in the interpreters, or any that you might want to pick in these 23 years that you're seeing this transformation taking place as we speak?
So I've been talking to quite a bit of people out, and some people are leaving the industry. And I know this is not a topic that probably people want to hear it. We tend to. I used to do a lot of PI, personality index profile, on people that you would hire, right? So that's, you dissect the personality index of the individual you're trying to hire. And generally speaking, translators across the globe have an insecurity, and it's nothing wrong. This is part of our who we are as a human being. Some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, some people have different things characterizing their personalities. And so that insecurity with all the changes that's coming in. So there's two options when you hear layoffs everywhere, right? So people on the inside, if they have a translator team inside, they're figuring out, do I need all these? Do I need all these people? And the human in the loop now is reducing the number of people required to do more work. So you need less people. So what happened to those people that you just laid off? So they have a decision to make, right? So I either go find a job, not in an LSP environment, maybe in a corporate, in a corporation, and I've seen a few of those. Like they working for an LSP, then they find a job at a bank, they find a job at a pharmaceutical company, etc. That's one way. The second thing is people are moving away from that, and they're saying, "Can I get a job in a different environment altogether?" They're ditching it. Now, one thing is for us to really keep an eye on is, and I know, like you mentioned, like Colombia, but there are many other countries that they're slowly progressing versus the high progressive countries, and not everybody's advancing at the same rate. I get your point very well. But I do believe that we need to keep an eye on the academic part of the industry, the academia part of the industry, whereby are we seeing enrollment up or down or flat? And if somebody would to ask, and I love the question the other day, I was talking to a translator and I asked the question, that person had 2 kids. I said, would you recommend for your kids to become a translators? This day and age? No. The answer is no. Why? Is because she doesn't want to give them that insecurity that she's living with. She doesn't want to give them that troubles water, if you will, that they're going through right now. That's one thing. So skills and talents, and it's life has its own way. And in industry, the language industry, like everybody else, like any other industry, you categorize employees by ABC. Those are the categories of performances. The C's are the lowest, the B are the middle, and the A are the high. And normally, when you get into that environment, of I have too many headcounts, I need to reduce headcounts, you normally reduce the C's first, then the B's, and you start really threshing into that A's from a human resources perspective. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to let your A's go. But if you're forced to, and you absolutely have to let them go because of many factors, not because they're good, but they have many financial factors. I can't afford them. There's many question marks on this one. Not because they're not performing. Sometimes they're just getting paid too much. They've been around for so long that you probably now with the changes that you probably need to let them go. The companies don't want to let go of the A's, and they first let go of the C's and the B's. That's the thing. And those C's and B's are either finding jobs in other corporations, not necessarily LSPs though, in other corporations doing other things.
And altogether, many junior professionals, I imagine, because a lot of their ratings in some cases are going to be related to their lack of experience, which generates slop,
That's
human
right.
slop in this case.
That's right.
And all these companies are making decisions, some making different decisions than others, some redirecting. If anyone is and what you're seeing, right, or what we are seeing, what are some of like the common denominators of what is happening within companies? You've already told us a little bit about this restructuring, but when it comes to like AI adoption, are they increasing their the tech teams in terms of managing risk? Of course, making sure that they have a longer runway and
Mm-hmm.
invest in certain things or be until they become certain of some of their needs. What do you see? What do you see there in the company's
So
strategies right
there
now?
are, from an AI adoption perspective, which is an interesting topic. We always talk about AI adoption in a operationally heavy companies. AI is being adopted as I want to satisfy the boss. I'm being blunt about it. I want to satisfy the boss. I want to make sure that he's off my back. I'll just go and adopt an AI. And the reason I say that is because we're putting AI as an additive to an existing process, and we're not starting the thinking with AI first and then add on the other steps of the process. People are saying, well, I've got my TMS, I've got my project management systems, whatever that is, and I've got my terminology databases. So, and the boss is asking me, I need to deploy AI. So how do I do it? How do I do that? Maybe I'll bolt it onto the TMS, and the delta that is not being translated currently using from the TMS can't be found in the database. That delta is being filled by the AI application. Okay, so that's one way to do it, but I would call it a duct tape solution, in my opinion. The companies that there are really taking a look, and this is another type of companies, are taking a look at AI from a ground up, basically, from the ground up. We start thinking about AI first. How do I automate everything? From the moment the customer initiate a request, to evaluating that request, that's all happening through AI, like answering questions, simple questions like, what type of text this is? Is that a human being decision or an AI decision? It's in my opinion, and based on the application that I've seen others do, it is now a possible, and some companies are practicing this, to be an AI decision, evaluating the text that's coming in, allocating the work, managing the workflow, and sending it out to translation. In the first category that I mentioned, where it's just a duct tape work, they haven't really felt the brunt of things, and it's coming. I mean, restructuring is making it happen. You either become a exceedingly automated or you're not going to be able to survive. The prices are tumbling. The delta for margin is shrinking. Your only hope is to take what's the market is giving you from a price perspective, what you can win at, and reverse engineer that into profitability. And how are you going to do that? Is by enhancing or increasing your efficiency internally and performance internally by reducing cost. And I know it's like the craziest thing. It's not me who started it. Somebody else in their wisdom decided to commoditize this industry. It should not have been commoditized to begin with. It should not be charged by word to begin with. You don't go to a lawyer and say, I'm going to pay you by number of words you wrote on a contract. But in a translation world, we do that. And why is that? Because somewhere, somehow, 30 years ago, somebody decided to compete with company A versus company B. And they said, okay, we're going to compete on a per word rate. In my opinion, that's the dumbest thing ever. it's a professional service. It should be charged completely differently. But here, the world that we're living in now, we inherited that, and we have to live with it. It's a per word rate. Prices are going down, and the only way to survive by reverse engineering the word dollars that you're getting from the market into profitability. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by hyper automate everything you do.
And everything that needs to be automated then will be automated. That's a phrase I've heard before. It does seem that the boundaries of what should humans do and what shouldn't humans do is gonna become clearer. In from your perspective, what do you see in terms of demand? Meaning, there are a lot of things that were not translatable before, and the alternative to machine translation is no translation. We've heard that before. But right now we also have some things that the alternative to human translation is machine translation. And then you have things that the alternative to human translation is no translation, because there is a very specific request from a Nobel Prize literary writer who can only be translated by someone he really loves, something like that. But Robin, what do you see in terms of the demand for language services and the diversity of those language services? What do you think is going to happen from your perspective?
So the entire world right now, Eddie, is going through a trust phase, meaning, do I trust technology? And not just the language industry, the consumers, the people who are consuming the content are asking themselves the question. Technology is available to anybody. The genie's out of the bottle. It is not exclusive anymore. It's ubiquitous to everybody. It's available everywhere. However, there is a question mark. If I don't speak language A and I'm using AI to translate to that language, I'm asking myself the question, is this correct? Yes or no? So I need validation. In that validation now, it's going to come from an industry. How is the industry going to plug these models, these language models that are being produced by any company out there is producing language models? Because, Microsoft 360 is there and they have their own SLM. They've got large language model or small language models, and they're creating their own. But the piece that is missing and where the talent's going to come in is in validating those outputs. Is this output coming out correctly? Do I trust it? Now, we are going through a trust phase, and I don't know how long this is going to last, 5-10 years, maybe not, maybe less than that. I think between 5 to 7 years, maybe this trust phase. And remember, we still haven't achieved AGI yet. Wait till we get to ASI. I was listening yesterday to the NVIDIA dude there. He's talking about quantum computing, and it's mind-boggling the amount of power we're going to get in terms of computing. And this is happening now. If you follow the money from an investment point of view, everybody's putting their money on quantum computing. So, we're dealing right now with, okay, so is the output in English to French or English to Spanish correct? But down the road, as computing and computers and computer power supercomputers generates more output and becomes more powerful, I don't think it's going to be up to us. I think they're going to be able to say, you made a mistake. They're going to correct us at that point. Right now, we're teaching it. This is just mind-boggling stuff. And I don't know if your listeners know, but my background is in technology. I have a degree in computer science, and I still code. I still write my Python codes, and I do automation on my own. And, I don't hire anybody to do it. I just do it myself. It's the amount of flexibility today's computing facilities or computing environment is giving us is incredible. But think about, what are we working on in the future? What is coming down the road? Right now, we're like, this is how far behind we are. It feels we're still trying to catch up to the current status, and many of us in the industry hasn't caught up to it. But the new technology that's coming in, which is going to hit us over the head very shortly, because we haven't absorbed this one, it's going to be even bigger.
Yes, there will be one wave after another, and it'll be like kind of like when you're really young in the beach and you're like, you don't know until you're out of the water that you're no longer part of what is going on or what is happening.
We heard of the term agile, right? So we need to be agile. Every company who's going to be successful in the future in this industry, they need to be absolutely agile. Long gone the days where you develop a process and you sit and watch it. Now you develop a process and you sit and watch to make changes, to change the process, to change your technology. Nobody, like back in the days, we used to buy computer software or hardware, and we only upgrade like when it's absolutely required, after it's completely dead. Now all these things are changing so rapidly that we need to think agile development, agile processes, agile business model. You mentioned earlier, we were talking earlier, what services do I offer? Are these services, okay for the market that we're in right now? Maybe the services are completely changing. You mentioned earlier, like there are some areas where translators needs to still get involved. I agree with you. The entire market is a pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid is the high volume, low price. And as you go up, you got higher prices, higher, more criticality in terms of quality, and it goes up. But the factor that we did not really include in that pyramid is technology advancement on a day-to-day basis. This technology is different. It doesn't need to be upgraded from 1.0 to 1.1 or 1.2. It's learning from us on a day-to-day basis, and it's enhancing its quality as we go up through the
Yeah,
pyramid.
like the risk formula, it's different every time. It's improving the risk assessment. I wonder if in this period that you're mentioning, and you've mentioned, we are in a type of transitionary period, that these volumes are gonna explode as well, and then probably companies are gonna start looking to really identify the economic value of where AI is being implemented. Tell us a little bit about, the places where you see right now and that you see in the future. We are gonna see an economic value from the adoption of artificial intelligence.
The economic value right now is happening in several areas. And it just goes for where the business needs, follow where the business needs are. In the lead generation and the top of the funnel, sales funnel activities, anything in that area, AI is playing a big role in generating leads, filling out the funnel. That is, you can see return on investment right away. And of course, throughout the entire company, or corporation, there is plenty of AI application to work with or to use. HR, finance, etc. Those are all internal agentic AIs that people are developing, but the immediate return on investment we're seeing in the go-to-market divisions.
One of the things, now that you mentioned, of course, go to market division, one of the things that we've seen in previous interviews, and we want to engage in that conversation, is also the change in uh, let's say terms, and the change in terminology. And we've seen companies start talking more about global experience or user experience. And when we're talking about go to market, we're talking how you get to the markets, rather than, oh, how do you localize, how do you translate my website. So that we're talking about go to market. It seems that now markets are exploding as well, meaning you are becoming, it's almost like we changed the telescope and now we see all these galaxies, which before were just kind of like not even ideas. Now we see countries as potentially viable markets, countries that we did not consider before, and we probably will be needing talent to at least manage these micro go-to-market strategies. Robin,
Mm-hmm.
how would you say this would evolve?
So I do a lot of work with incubators, right? So those young companies are on the commercialization aspect of things. And every incubator or every startup is starting in a local community, like Colombia, for instance, where you are, or Canada, or United States, whatever they are. But what I'm noticing in those conversations, especially now with the advancement of technology, a few years ago, it used to be cost prohibitive for them to think, I got to do everything now global. But now I can do it global. I can look at the market in a completely different way. I'm doing it. So if I'm developing a software, I'm developing a service, and I'm a young entrepreneur, I don't have a lot of money to go with. Maybe I got a couple of investors helping me. And somebody back in the days used to come in and say, hey, in order for you to translate all your content, you need like $500,000. Now they can do it, and they can do it effectively and push it out to the global market. And hence they go from local startup to global startup. This is a great story, because what is helping these young entrepreneurs now is the opportunity to take their widgets, to take their products, to take their services globally at a fraction of the cost that it was costing them before. And I've heard that a million times, because technology is available to them right now.
And Robin, the technology available makes us and is making us more productive. That's like the bottom line of the conversation is,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you more productive? It's like it seems like so.
Oh,
So when you
100%.
have to that, you have to go to like that gut feeling of like, is this adding economic value to my life? It's like, I would pay for the app myself if it wasn't provided, right?
That's right.
So I think for, and of course for some professions is more evident than for others. Marketeers, it's always said that we destroy everything first. People didn't understand what the economic value was going to be for the internet, and there are people that already they still don't have a website, right? So it seems like this one is going to catch up much quicker, especially with those that are that use technology. With this, expectations are changing significantly. Now, automation seems to be like expected. It seems like you are going to need to be fast, and that the differentiating elements are going to be others. Robin, what do you think are the differentiating elements of the companies that are going to win in this new go-to-market environment in which we encounter ourselves today?
So, I'm using myself as as an example in this one because again, 6 weeks ago I launched a new company and I wanted to, and it's just me, to be honest with you. And you mentioned my podcast earlier, right? So, it just on those two events, on those two platforms, my current company and the podcast. You talk about the example of automation. It's like one individual now become multiple individuals doing multiple things in the background. So the key differentiator for us is, do you have the talent or do you have the expertise to move the tools around to allow you to respond quickly to the market, to inquiries? If somebody sends you a message on LinkedIn, how long are they waiting before they get answered? And are they being answered promptly? And that just in time answering or interacting with the go to market initiatives that you have out there, being whatever they are. You send an email out, somebody respond, you need to answer quickly. How do you do that today? If you're an army of one, basically, you need a lot of automation tools. And I started this, a few years ago. As an example, I wanted to have there's a lot of email tools out there, right? You can throw a rock in the street and you find 20 email broadcasting tools out there, right? So I've used them, and I come from the telecom background, and I've used them before, and none of them really made any sense to me, just because I was trying to measure the open rate and how many replies I'm going to get. And if I use the old traditional methods of using the current platforms that are out there, it just didn't do anything for me. So I said, okay, I want to build my own. So how do I do that? So I took literally, and I'm not, it's not an exaggeration. Saturday morning, I go to Starbucks, I buy like a large coffee, I come and sit on my desk, and I write my first email management software. And the way it worked is just like, it's rudimentary, it's all code. There's no visual, HTML package attached to it, just all codes. But that particular program, it was done on a weekend, did more results for me than I would use anything else, really. Any Salesforce or any of those guys out there. You got to be able to learn quickly, because you have to learn. If you don't spend the time to learn, and even though you're not a programmer, nobody's asking you to become a programmer, to be honest with you, but you got to learn the capabilities, the features. What are they capable of? For instance, there are many tools out there, like from responding to a phone call using AI tools. I've tried them. They're very close to human. Like AI answering a sales call, very close to human. And when it gets complicated, and this is like the funny part that I thought, when it gets complicated in a conversation, they toss it to a human, which is me. So you got to be able to be avant-garde. Don't go back to the old traditional way. Learn every day. Figure out what new tools out there. First thing I do in the morning, I just sit down and figure out who came up with a new idea today. I'd like to know that.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Multilingual Magazine is a great place to get
There
new
you go.
ideas, to spark that curiosity, and you can get it at home, digitally or physically. But you can also find a great content by Robin Ayoub. Robin, the people that also you interview, the content that you put out there. I agree with you. It's very important to put that content out there and to increase our collective intelligence. Robin, where can we find more about the work that you do, the interviews that you have? Where can we learn more?
Yeah, so the Localization Fireside Chat, it's on every platform now. We're approaching 1,000 downloads per day, so I'm very happy about that.
Congratulations.
And also, as soon as you Google Localization Fireside Chat, you'll find me, or LinkedIn, the favorite place, or you can email me, robin.ayoub at n49networks.com.
Thank
Or you
you,
can call
Robin.
me at 416-409-8202.
There you go. And we're not going to share the social security number. We stop there. I also share
Phone
my
number
phone
is
number. I'm
fine.
like, I'm totally accessible. If you want to find me, you can find me really quickly. Like, I'm sure within 5 minutes,
There
you
go.
message me. I'm pretty sure I'll get back to you, whoever you are in the
Hey,
planet.
by the way, we need to host you on our podcast.
Yes, please. Let's do that
Got
because
to do
it's
it
always
again.
good to catch up on the conversation. I'm sure, Robin, that our listeners are like, Eddie, why are you stopping right now? We need to keep going on this one. But I am sure that our listeners will come to Localization today. We need to have a conversation there. We probably need to have a panel to talk about more details about how this transformation is happening. I think we need to put our brains together to make some of that happen. Robin, any messages out there for everyone listening right now?
So the only message I would say to everybody is, look, I've lived by that motto for many, many years. I've had it on the signature of my emails for many years. I will share it with you. Never give up, never surrender, and don't take no for an answer. There's always a way. Go around, go over, go through if you have to. There's always a way. Don't give up.
All right. Thank you for those kind words. And thank you for listening to LangTalent. Once again, a big thank you to Robin Ayoub for joining us and sharing his perspective on how AI, budgets, and global growth are reshaping the language industry and why human expertise, dialogue, and collaboration still matter more than ever. You can follow Robin's work and listen to his conversations with industry leaders on the Localization Fireside Chat podcast and YouTube channel. Catch new episodes of LangTalent on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and share so others can find the show. I'm Eddie Arrieta. This is Multilingual Media. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.